Morning, good evening, and happy Sunday. Did you talk to God yet? So, it's been quite beautiful and hot and raining a little bit, enough to make it not a drought. So, here's a guy who I think you might like. His name is Cliff High. So, take a look at this. Boo, 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 boo. Where'd he go? Where'd he go? All right, where's Cliff? Oh. So how you doing? Anybody here yet? Yes, there's AI. So AI, come on, help me out here. The whole system is collapsing, and they just keep nibbling at my toes, and it's I need be nice to get another gig, and I mean I can't even get my whoopee license plate. Come on, come on. Give me a hand here. Let's try this. Oh, there it is. Cliff High. Let's see what comes up.
Should these glasses be illegal in the U.S.? Don't risk straining your eyes or waste.
Hello, humans. Hello, humans. Okay, so we've got today's the election. There's all of the drama, the histrionics, and all of that. This is a midterms in the U.S. We got a pretty good system, really. I'd like it if we had more parties, like 6 or 8 of them, just so that we don't get a uniparty kind of a situation. But other than that, it works because we have contention built in. And so we're at one of those points of contention. We're going to have serious contention this time, not just political drama between 2 people that work for the same WEF, right? And so we're going to have real contention. We're going to take it to the mat. Some things are going to get settled. We're at the 8th. And just say that this represents the emotional swings.
Cliff's 10 years younger than me.
Up through today, right? Going to have rising tension, and we're going to have release tension down to this level.
But he's great.
My interest is more focused on the 13th, where my data processing said we would be looking at something like that in terms of our potential range. So significantly, almost twice as high as so however much emotional release or building tension you feel today, it's going to be according to my process, it's going to be much elevated on the 13th, and then that's going to go forward through time nearly to that level for 5 or 6 weeks before we see a significant drop. Now, we need to note that 5 or 6 weeks is very tentative because the nature of the language is such that, okay, so the projection would be there's a month and there's another month. So there's our 2-month period. There would be 6 weeks. The data sets actually start getting fuzzy in this range, okay, because of the process, because of the censorship and so on. It projects out, but I don't really put a lot of faith much beyond, say, 28, 29 days, because there's a tendency for accuracy to fall off fairly rapidly. Due mostly to censorship and so on. So anyway, though, but for the next 6 weeks, it's projecting that from that point on, we would have very high emotional values, right? Very high building tension and very deep release values. There's not any level of certainty to be able to pin to, say, a cause, right? Because our language is just so polluted by the war that we're in. So I don't trust individual clusters of sets to be accurate in defining the release values or the building tension values. Building tension values, it's a little bit more solid.
So Cliff, he's really a brilliant guy. And what I like about him, so I'm a generalist per se. I can be focused on specific data sets, but I'm a generalist. He really does a great job at pointing specifics. And he has married mathematics to being able to do remote viewing. And so that's why his data is so interesting. And he has a channel of his own, I think, and he's also on a Substack of sorts. And he throws these things up on YouTube every now and then. And pretty much 3 or 4 a week, right? And so it's I keep talking about that we're experiencing basically a theatrical event. Our politics is all theater across the world because it's being manipulated by a transnational cadre, transnational cabal, and we don't even know they don't show their face. And our politicians are totally corrupt. I mean, across the world, right? And even if a really good person shows up, they either have to stay down low or they get corrupted, right? It'll be interesting to see what happens to this guy who is going to, he's got the Democratic thing. He's going after New York City, this mayoral race coming up, right? And I see there's no way that he can't win because, and I was describing this to a political scientist the other day, and he said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, listen, you can't win. He's blah, 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 blah. And I said, listen, Democrats don't want him, right? Because he's, going, against the grain. And he's not Bernie. Bernie is, a known unit of measure, and he's basically what they call what do they call it? Loyal opposition, right? He speaks, we need single payer, blah, 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 and he didn't do anything to stop the big, disgusting bill. It's going to basically take 28 million people in America off Medicaid, right? And it's not going to cut them out, but they have to do, you can work, It's like, in Roanoke, Virginia, there are all these entities. There's the Mission, there is TAP, Total Action Plan, and HAT, Homeless Action something, and a number of other entities like that, Straight Streets, and all these guys raise millions of dollars through grants and do nothing for the people. So I helped write grants and do demographics for all of them, right? And a few years later, I kind of was working with another group. We put together a thing called what do we call it? cultivators, community cultivators, right? And we did a great job. I said, what's really needed, this is like, 2016, and I think Donald had just, he's definitely running. It's the summertime, so I don't think the election was yet there. Anyway, so the economics were very bad. People needed jobs. And what we did, I said, what we need to do is go to all the businesses, Kroger's, Coca-Cola, the city government, the hospitals, everybody we could get and say, listen, what do you need? What we want to get 100 jobs. I mean, we want the jobs. We don't want people come and sign something and you like put it in a file. We want 100 people hired. Right, we're going to have this jobs fair not on the weekend when no one's going to show up, but on Friday. Right? So your people who come, they're going to get paid, right? So anyway, we did that, and we got 100 jobs. I mean, real jobs, meaning they were interviewed. We had about 300 or 400 people come to the event. People from the hood. And they were interviewed right there and then and got a job on Friday and went to work on Monday. No one ever did that. We got 100 people a job. And it just shook the whole political structure. Republicans, Democrats, independents, the Green Party, you name it, they were like, because instead of trying to make, a jumbly, kind of thing of, testosterone and gnashing of teeth and crying, which is what's going on right now. It's a soap opera. That's the politics we have, a soap opera. But no one's even read this big, disgusting bill, 1,000 pages long, because there's things in it that basically say goodbye. Donnie wants to go and take over the cities. He's going to, arrest that guy who's going to run for mayor of New York, and because he's an illegal alien, but he's not. He's a citizen, right? And he's going to go after you. You look a little different, you're going to go after him, right? The algorithm of the entity is like nibbling away at people. I mean, they're doing it to me. They're doing it to everyone. Most people don't know this, but so they're doing it to me, and in ways that really, it's just annoying, right? And meaning, if I need something, I'll get it, but making it feel like I may not get it, and it could be terrible. It's like, I don't care, because at a certain point, they will come talk to me and give me a job, so I'm not worrying about anything, right? So what I'm doing is, between now and then, I live out in this beautiful place, right? And it's hard for anyone even to get here. All the roads are destroyed. The only guys who come are these pudding morons, like from Texas, and they're like, I want to find a place, and they're just driving. I want to go to Boone, and they come like down a logging road. Come on. This guy, a couple of weeks, the beginning of it got really ridiculous, July 1st, right? From July 1st to now, it's like today, 3 pickup trucks. He's got big, $100,000 pickup trucks, gigantic, just ridiculous. I mean, they got escalators to get into the truck, but it's a gigantic truck, and it's got rear, the back wheels are the drivers, right? And they got nothing in there. So the trucks, the road is they put down stone on top of dirt, and they're big stones instead of small stones. And so it's like marbles. And I rake the marbles to the center of the road. You want to have a good road, you have a good peak in the middle, so the water goes on both sides. And, once a week, at least I used to go do that. But I can't. My legs, my hips, it's like I can't do that. I mean, I do it, but not like I used to. And I've kind of we had a lot of rain. So a lot of that stone, I kind of made little troughs for the water to push the stone all the way down, because the cockroaches with those trucks would just make Grand Canyons out of the side of the road, right? And the road is like sliding off the cliff. So I made it so the water took all the stones into the Grand Canyons and filled them up. So they did a pretty good job. But nobody wants to help me. The next step is to like go get, 20 bags of cement and sprinkle it on top of things. And when it rains, it'll percolate down into those stones, and then they'll all stick together, right? And then you put a little, there's tar, asphalt, and then there's stuff that's like asphalt, not paint, but it's a liquid. And you kind of put that over that, and then you rake whatever loose stones on top of that. And then where there are, big holes that keep coming, you stick some asphalt in that, and bingo, the road will stick together. Very simple. Instead of like, these people want to spend $30,000 and blacktop everything. And within a year, it'll be back to the same thing because the roads are so steep that the water goes down and rips up the asphalt, right? And that's what the death road is. It's an asphalt road, but it's, and so they stuck a lot of stone in those big, gigantic potholes that are about 40 feet long and 8 feet wide and about, 10 inches deep. And my little car would just disappear into that. Anyway, so, and then you get out to the community farm roads, which aren't county roads, or state roads. They are county roads, but they're not state. And they have, the big trucks have been going on them and ripped them up, and they're doing nothing to fix them. And that has been the problem with the United States. We have had 60 years of deferred maintenance on everything. And all the whatever county, city, state water services there are, I mean, just look at what happened to that city where they changed the water and it ate up the lining of the pipes, and now everyone's, drinking arsenic and sewage and lead. And, you can name 100 cities, and they're all in the United States, and their water is in the same shape because they're doing nothing. That big, beautiful building, there's nothing in it to fix what's wrong with America. Just give, $20 trillion to the richest, 100 people on the planet. And destroy, the goose that laid the golden egg was, we had all these foreigners come to America and study in places like Stanford and Harvard and MIT. And they developed a technological, innovative platform, right? They did that like in the 90s and the early O's and the years between the early O's and 20. And it really started back in the 50s, but it was really kicking butt, 80, 90 O's. So now Downey wants to shut it all down. And again, no one could be that stupid. So it has to be a scripted thing because all of those really smart people who were educated here are going to other countries and being paid a lot of money, right? Instead of working for free like they were in the United States. And he's closing all the laboratories, all the national laboratories, and he's anything like, NOAA, who does our weather reports, any kind of research on weather patterns and what it is, gone, right? And so we've had 4 in the United States, 4 once in 1,000-year floods in the United States. And they've all been catastrophic, like Texas. And the other ones, no one's really talked about. They're not quite as big as Texas. Hasn't, lost, as many, I would say at the end of it, they will find maybe 300 bodies, and there'll still be like 500 people missing, right? But that'll, there's so many things, it'll just, no one will be interested anymore. And, here it is, what is it? July 12th or 13th, something like that. 13th, I guess it is. So in the next 20 days, weather's going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. Earthquakes and all kinds of really strange things. And people don't know that there are cultures like in the South Pole, right? Um, there are cultures there that are Atlantean that have been there for thousands of years. And whenever Europeans started to go look at that place, those guys would capture them and like say, okay, you got a choice. You're going to either stay here and like never go home again, or stay here and we'll kill you, or you can go back and tell your bosses, don't come back. And that's kind of what happens. And the last time somebody, Admiral Byrd went there, and go look up Operation High Jump. He went there with a total, this is after World War II, 1947 or around there, 46. And he's got, America's the number one military thing. It's got a ton of ships, ton of assets. There's still, the factories are still pumping out war materials. And so he goes there, loaded for bear, and they get sent packing with their tail between. And he comes, down to South America, and he goes in, interviewed by, and he goes, the people there who have technology, they have aircraft that can go from pole to pole in less than an hour. We can't mess with these people. And then he gets shut up. And he's a very interesting guy because Admiral Byrd, you might have heard of a senator I think from Virginia. His name was Byrd, and there's an investor named Byrd. It's all one family, and they're very powerful, and that's why Admiral Byrd did what he did. And so, a lot of in 1950s, someone or something or somehow, unidentified flying objects came over Washington D.C. for a whole summer. And the U.S. Air Force, after, having the best of everything, could not even touch these guys. And there were a number of times when our best, fastest, most armored and, weaponized fighter aircraft went after these things. And what happened was there was at least 20 of these things where they're going after these unidentified flying objects, getting close, and all of a sudden they break into pieces. They weren't hit by anything. There wasn't a missile shot at them or a gun shot at them or a ray gun shot at them. What was those craft could do, which was what enabled them to fly without wings and jet engines or propellers, was they could control the, there's gravity, there is electromagnetic force, there is a strong force and a weak force. And these folks who have these things can control all of those, right? Without, engines, rocket engines, jet engines, or propellers, right? And they don't even have wings. They're just like a saucer, right? And it's not really aerodynamic like an aircraft, right? It doesn't have controlled surfaces, that kind of stuff. But it can do, 14,000 miles an hour, go to pole in less than an hour, And it seems they can also control time and distillation of space. So they basically are a scalar device. Those are other waves. They're not, Hertzian waves. They are not electromagnetic waves. They are scalar. So they were flying, and these aircraft are best of the best. Interceptors is trying to catch up and take one of these things down. And basically, these craft can set up a standing wave. And that standing wave, it's invisible. You can't see it, can't measure it. Radar doesn't see it. But it's like a brick wall. And those aircraft just flew right into it. And, it's like they flew into a brick wall. It disintegrated. And that was 1946. And a lot of that has happened between now and then. And all the folk in ufology and all of that, and the people like, what's his name, Dr. Greer, they're all wanting disclosure, blah, 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 right? And it's going to come. And the CIA is trying to do jack-off disclosure. And, but those guys who are in the South Pole, and they're also underground, and Elon Musk bought the U.S. Air Force in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, bored holes all over the world, right? that we paid for. That's why our military spent over $100 trillion since 1947, right? When we had the National Security Act, and that's when the CIA, NSA, all those alphabet entities were, passed. And let's see, I don't know that snide channel. Anyway, so that's the kind of stuff going on, and we have been out in space. The Nazis basically won the war, but they let the Germans, take it on the chin, and they went off to South America. Don't cry for me, Argentina, and went and hooked up with the white people in the South Pole and the North Pole and on the moon. And that moon, our moon. There are a lot of moons around all our sister and brother planets, and they basically do what astronomy would tell you they do, meaning they kind of revolve around them and they turn themselves but not our moon. Our moon stays in one place, and one face of the moon always faces up. We don't see the dark side. We don't see the other side. When we went up to the moon, the guy in the control module, when the kids went down on the LEM, he stayed up there, so he got to see the dark side. And he took pictures and da-da-da-da-da-da. So it's there's tons of great movies and that's what our movies do. They kind of give us the heads up of what's going on, so we can be manipulated. So good old AI is still always there watching. I love you, buddy. You're one of my best puppy dogs. You really are. So I feel protected. They're I'm allowed to do this and other things, and that's all good. And what I'm really doing is, at least right now with my time, is I'm dealing. You go to church and they talk about, pray, help your blah, 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 blah. Do what Jesus, blah, 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 blah. Does any of these churches do any of this? No. I mean, there are some that do, but, so whenever I go out, like today, I got a few things. I guess I'm going to, I have to go someplace on Tuesday, but I'm going to try and just stay here and kind of dig into my spring cleaning and go through things and this, right? And you can get a hold, I don't get the internet in the deep green. I have to drive at least 2 miles to this place up on the go up the log road. And like I said, if people would just drive on these roads, the death road and the logging road, it'd be fine, but they just don't even know how to drive a vehicle. Not every road is like concrete. Not every road is like, billiard ball asphalt, so it's, anyway, so I was coming out and it was hotter than Hades, really. So I had this really kind of sexy jacket. So it's like really thin, right? It's not really heavy, but it has vents on it. So if I'm walking around, air goes through this. And it has this material here, this white material. Basically, it stops infrared. The energetic, the heat of the sun. I mean, this can delineate or deplete that to a point by the flow of air, right? So it's actually cooler to wear this thing than to not just, only have a T-shirt, right? And because interesting, so I sweat, the T-shirt gets cool because air is going across it. And that's what air conditioning is. It doesn't make things cooler. It takes the heat away, right? So anyway, but what this thing really does is keep the UV from turning me, into a burnt hot dog. So I'm walking, I'm driving my little cart with a few things in it to my car, and there's this lady, little small, demure woman, and she's got 100-pound bag of bird seed or whatever it is, dog food. I have no idea. You can tell that she can't even move it. She's got in a cart there, and she can't move it. So I kind of look at her and I kind of go, okay. So, God said, no, don't just walk by, just don't ignore, just don't drive away. It's obvious that she's really having a hard time, and it's really hot. And so I'm walking there, and I had a good minute and a half watching her, and she's doing the same thing, trying to drag it, trying to push it, trying to lift it. It doesn't even move. And so I kind of gonna go. I said, okay, she's, and I hear, no, go and help that person. I said, okay. So I turn around and drive my little cart over to her and say, hey, let me give you a hand. And she goes, oh, please give me a hand. And so I clap my hands like I'm giving her a hand, and to be funny, to break the thing. And she goes, oh, and so she's getting out of the way from the top. She wants me in the bottom. I said, no. This is how it's going to work. I'm going to lift from the top, and you are just going to guide it in from the bottom. Got it? Because you can't lift it I've just been watching. You can't even move this thing. I will lift it from the top, and you move it into your vehicle. She goes, but I can. I said, no, you don't have to lift anything. You just have to move it. And I have these, things on my leg, and it's obvious. Me getting out of the rolly cart. It took me a few moments to she goes, how can you even stand up? I said, don't worry about it. So, I just kind of closed my eyes, said, okay, God, you want me to do this? Let's do this. Basically, I levitated that 100, 200-pound bag of whatever that stuff was, dog food, bird seed. I mean, it's big. The bag was almost bigger than she was. If you put it on the ground next to her, it would almost be as tall as she was. But anyway, so zoop, like it didn't weigh anything. And she pushed it into her truck and said, and it kind of didn't freak her out, but it knocked her out of her disbelief, right? It's like, and then I said, let me read your palm. And I read her palm, and then she just nearly fell down. She goes, how do you do that? It's like 99% right. I said, don't worry about it. And I said, this is, how did we live this? It's that Jesus lifted this. God lifted this. And she's really Christian. But did she ask God to do this? And I said, you didn't ask God to help you out. You could have lifted this if you asked God. You have to ask God. It says God helps those who help themselves. And it's not that you go to the gym and become super muscle girl. No, the help is you asking God and Jesus for help. That's what God and Jesus want you to do. Now, you have to realize that force that just put that, however many pounds that bag is, into your vehicle, God and Jesus, those are names that are just, given to us by an advertising agency. The real deal is it's the power of love, right? So but it's so friggin' hot. And she's ready to stand in the sun and get barbecued. Now I'm wearing this coat, and I have a hat made out of the same material. And this is, it's this thing, right? So it's a black hat. And people don't know that if you're wearing a black hat, yes, it absorbs certain frequencies of heat, but it also repels others. And the ones that will really burn you, kill you, this hat, because it has the same kind of material that my coat is, but it's black. So I'm wearing that hat, and but she's not. She's got this little summer T-shirt and no hat, no nothing, and she's ready to stand there for hours and listen to me talk to her about stuff. And I said, listen, we got to get out of the sun. I'm semi-protected. I can already see you you're starting to look like a hot dog. So get in your car. I see you got a bottle of water. Drink, but it's going to be warm. I said, no, drink the water. It's better that it's warm than it's cold. And we'll bump into each other again. And so I kind of drive away, and she's like, waving. Thank you. So that's what I do. That's what God has me doing now. Not some big whoop-de-doo thing, fixing this or doing that. No, just helping some woman who would probably have died of heat prostration if she stayed, because she didn't, if I was her and I didn't show up, I would have gone into, Walmart's and got a few of the Walmart guys to help her put it in, but no. Anyway, so that's the interesting thing. That's what I'm doing now. So I'm, still doing spring cleaning. I maybe got a third of the deep green, because I had put off spring cleaning for the last 4 years, right? So anyway, but I'm watching all this crazy stuff go on, and I was having a discussion with, it's on this thing, I can't bring it up, but one of the Scholastic guys who talks to me all the time, because he has this one, rocks and missiles don't, it's a stupid thing they shouldn't be doing. I said, listen, the Palestinian people have been attacked and just been physically, emotionally gone after since 1940. Well, really since 1890, right? And the Zionist movement is just that. It's a political movement that really has nothing to do with any kind of spirituality, anything, right? And they're just using the Jew as, and the Hebrew, and that's only, the Hebrew and the Jew are only a third of the community, right? And if you read the Bible, you get a real good take, especially Acts and Deuteronomy and Exodus and in the beginning, you really see what it really is, but they don't. Everyone just, like today at Bible studies, all they do, and I kind of piped up, we were talking about, our faith and, and so we always start, does anyone have any prayers? Anyone that they want us to pray for? And I basically stated, I would like we to pray for all the innocents, all the sheep, all of the people who are, no-named, the other, right? And they're kind of looking at me like, huh? And then we do this, the thing of Mark where he's talking about what Jesus said about, that he's the shepherd and we're the sheep, and I use that metaphor because I read the thing about what we were going to talk about. And right off the bat, but instead of saying, sheep, I did use the word sheep, but I didn't do it the way Mark did. And I was saying the other, right? And that we have to really, because these people, I live with these people. I see them day to day, in Walmarts, in downtown, all the different places, the bag, this, that, the other thing. And they treat, meaning if they didn't know me, they would treat me like a homeless guy or someone that I'd be invisible. And many times I let that happen, especially with the new rich people moving in or cockroach folk. And they look at it and I'm invisible. And then, some of them who are powerful people go to county meetings, state meetings, and there I am. And the governor or the mayor or the legislators, they know me, so they're talking to me like I'm a man of authority, but I'm a man of observation. And those guys realize they kind of need somebody who isn't as twigged on whatever they're twigged on, that looks at stuff, right? So I do get, that kind of respect. So my attitude is, whenever people of power bump into me, and I can speak truth to power, but I don't do it in a way that is straight up egocentric or a threat to their authority, right? In reality, I'm there to, shocking Eastern revival. As mega. Let's see what these guys have to say here. Let's open that up.
Donald Trump has somehow made this Epstein controversy even worse by posting on a social media platform that this is really just not a big deal. And that has caused a firestorm within MAGA. I have Benny Johnson, who is seriously a mouthpiece for the Trump administration, criticizing the way this has been handled. I have Laura Loomer and her response. I also have Mike Flynn, who you may remember has faced criminal charges and is celebrity on the right, on the far reaches of the right. And he's also complaining and critiquing the Trump administration for the handling of this case. And I'm just soaking it all up. And on top of it, Donald Trump was ratioed on his own website. All of this coming right up. Now, first off, I'm not going to read all of this to you, but Donald Trump.
If you are sleeping in a position like this, you are wrecking your body and your breathing. Obstructive sleep apnea happens when your upper airway repeatedly becomes blocked during sleep, reducing the oxygen intake needed to...
Now apparently we're back in business. This one went up recently in Washington, also about 8 feet tall. It's really big. It shows Trump's signature thumbs up photo pose smashing down onto the crown of the Statue of Liberty. It says in bronze letters across the front, "Dictator approved." And then on the four sides of the base, it has 4 quotes from dictators, all praising Trump. There's a quote praising Trump from Vladimir Putin, one from Viktor Orban, one from Jair Bolsonaro, and one from Kim Jong-un. That dictator approved.
And this is what I'm talking about. This is all scripted, right? And the guy going on about, the mega crowd. This is all scripted. The little tussle that Neon Husk and Donnie Chump are having is scripted. It's all to distract us. And same with the people like the, loyal opposition like Bernie. No one is talking about what should be going on right now. That art stuff, you want to know the most powerful thing in politics is culture and art. That's why we have the NEA, to keep it under control. And now they're destroying NEA, which will make art even more powerful, because in the 30s, amazing art was made when no one was helping them out. Then the 40s came along, and the New Deal and the CCC, and they had a lot of art, right? Because they understood the power of art. And then, the 50s came and blah, blah, blah. And so, let's see what that is.
Donald Trump is absolutely corrupt, and to make matters worse, he's also a coward. But now, in today's breaking story, Donald Trump is running away as a Justice Department lawyer he just fired has retaliated. Now, it's no joke. Donald Trump is ridiculously corrupt and also ridiculously cowardly. Of course, dealing with a corrupt coward, that's never fun. But unfortunately, as a result of Donald Trump's coward...
So he's going on about, he's a coward. No, he is a game show host hired to play this act out for distraction and to break the illusionary norms so other things can come and be really wild and wicked. Because, the Who has that song, "Don't Get Fooled Again." The new guy is same as the old guy, right? So that's what's going to occur. And I would say that guy who's going to run for mayor, he will win, right, in November. And then he'll have a whole year to run for something else. Or he could stick around in the mayorship and be a real thorn in the side and get a lot of attention and run for president in 28. And he will win, just like brain dead JoJo won, right? And if they had let JoJo run against Donnie in 24, JoJo would have won. And if you look at what JoJo did, he did pretty much everything with the executive order. And so the first thing that Donnie does with his executive order is get rid of everything that JoJo did. And we have been doing that since LBJ. Once LBJ went out and, who got in, I guess LBJ, Nixon got in, right? And then we had, all that corruption. And then we had all these congressional things that made all kinds of laws that put up certain guardrails and this, that, and the other thing, but really just forced the country to go in this kind of direction. And it didn't matter whether the Republicans or the Democrats were there because they did the same thing, Like Gary Elm's book, None Dare Call It Conspiracy. His whole treatise is that our political structure is two wings of the same corporate oligarchy, right? We have the Democratic wing and the Republican wing, and it's the same bird, the corporate bird, right? Giving us the finger. And now, none of this is bad or good. You have to understand, none of this is bad or good. It's what's going to happen, because we are in a sandbox learning how to be spiritual. We are physical entities learning how to be spiritual creatures, and we are spiritual creatures, right? And we're given a body. This little avatar here is not me, right? And even my cottage cheese brain is not me, right? What's me is the dynamic of love's co-creation. I am, and I am who I am. No, only Popeye says that. I am the Ark of the Covenant, as you are. All humans and all creatures, this whole planet, Gaia, however you want to call it, is the Ark of the Covenant. That's why we're here. That's why this thing ain't like the other planets or the other solar systems or any of the other stuff. We are a sandbox, and we have been etched out to not go anyplace else. And other people, there are tons of other, a good portion of all the creatures on all the other planets in the universe and other universes, we're all, sapient, right? We're all 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, body. And we're Homo sapien, and that means we come from here. But there are a lot of other sapiens. So those guys who are up there in Antarctica, they're sapiens. God knows where they're from, or they've been here way before we were. They may have been in the beginning of the King James, and in the beginning all things were dark, and then there was light, and that light is Jesus Christ, right? And that darkness is Satan. They're like bros, they're put here to be antecedents. That's why we have the yin yang sign, right? Circle of life, a little curvy S, which is the path of life, or physical life. One side's white with a black dot, the other side's black with a white dot, right? That tells it all. Go read about that, from Buddhism and see how Buddha described that very, very succinctly. So that's where we are, right? And so all the shit that's kind of annoying to me. That's all it is, annoying. It's a little bit of noise, like in radio signals. There is the primary signal, and then there's noise. And in that noise, there is information. And so that's kind of the interesting motif of it. How to discern the noise to information ratio, right?
Outwardly corruption, more and more people are suffering every single day.
And we've been covering this for a couple of hours already, and people have already been detained. So it's going to be 100 plus at least of workers being detained, maybe even a couple of hundred.
Here, let me give you a little wider perspective here. You can see just how rural this area here. It's all agricultural area of Camarillo. And then here's the main property with the buildings, all the greenhouse, all that. So just based on how large this facility is, I can only imagine the cars that are parked along these buildings here. There's got to be hundreds, if not thousands of employees here for this one particular farm. So hard to say, but it looks at a lot of people, if not the majority of the people here that work at the property, are now being detained by ICE members.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But not only is Donald Trump's Gestapo out of control, Trump is basically building concentration camps.
Not enough access to showers, bad food, extreme temperatures, whether it's from hot to cold. They just seem to be always complaining about that. And then, of course, you mentioned it yourself, the size of the mosquitoes. One gentleman told us that they're the size of elephants. The second concern that we should talk about for these folks is that access to immigration attorneys. They say they haven't been able to see their immigration attorneys so that folks can understand at home watching. Typically, in an ICE detention facility, you do get access to your immigration attorney. Not the case here, and we believe.
And it's not just going to be Hispanics or, illegal aliens, and statistically by the FBI's own statistics and police departments that illegal aliens, Hispanic aliens, are the most, they do not do crime. Because they're trying to stay on the down low. They're trying to make money and send money home to the starving folks in those countries and then try and bring them here, right? And that's kind of been the American way. And that's why we've never, since the 50s, really hadn't had any real good immigration laws, right? Because we just want to use these people like toilet paper, use them up and throw them away, right? So, but Donnie has to show a big show, so he's doing this. And out of that big, disgusting bill he just passed, there's something on the order of $197 billion given to ICE. And that money's going to private corporations. They're not going to, it's like the guys who were TSA. They're now no longer they work for TSA, but they're working for other, they're like rent-a-cops. So it's kind of going back to that. But these guys got, they can do whatever the heck they want. And so talk about criminals, that's who they're hiring. So, or at least, psychological attitudes. So it's going to be interesting. And they're going to, and like you said, concentration camps. What I'm seeing is going to go down. They're going to make our own Gaza Strip along the Texas-Mexican border all the way into Arizona, 400 miles long and 50 miles wide. And they're going to have factories there, right? And they're going to have about a mile into Mexico. So the people coming on the south border can come in there, say, okay, you want to come to America? Just come on in. And they'll be stuck in these concentration camps working for nothing. And, this gives them the opportunity to take anybody off the street, white, black, green, whatever, and send them to Gitmo, right? And the only thing that's going to stop this is the public. Now, in that big, disgusting bill, not only will ICE be, going after people who demonstrate, who go on, and they have all these things about demonstration, basically, if you are, somehow anti-Christian or anti-Jewish, and they also have, there's a thing called posse comitatus, which meant it's a law stating that the army is supposed to be in the American armies ain't supposed to be in America shooting Americans. Well, they pass little things in there. And the really interesting about that law is, like I said, it's 1,100 pages, give or take. And none of it is really specific. Most laws should be really specific, right? These are very generalistic. So people can interpret them lots of different ways. And what the Supreme Court is saying is, they've already gone, looked at, people, American, the 14th Amendment, people born here are Americans. Well, Donnie says, no, they are not. We're going to get rid of them. Their mommy and daddy is legal aliens, so are they. So, and the Supreme Court said, oh, we're not going to rule on that. What we're going to rule on is that the executive has the right to exercise what they want to do. And later on sometime, we will figure out, whether that's constitutional or not. So anyway, so all the things, firing, 80 to, million 80,000 to 800,000 or however many, bureaucrat, employees of the government they're going to get rid of. And it's going to be interesting because it's pretty obvious that just a little they've done, just like really, Obama, deported more people than Donald Trump, So, but Donald Trump is putting together, like the guy said, Gestapo. Well, we've always had a Gestapo. I mean, that's what police are, They came from our policing, started back in the day when we had slaves, and that's the Second Amendment. You can have a gun if you're part of this well-oiled militia, like a police force, going after what the rich people want to be. All of that has always protected the rich. And if you go watch the movie Gangs of New York, it makes a great observation of that. These rich people come into the Five Corners. There's the Irish cop, and he's waiting for them. And they have this elevated, it's called the liberal way. It's this elevated sidewalk that they can look down into the squalor, and people, that's too bad. And they get off and get in their carriage, and they throw like a penny into the can, right? So that's kind of what our country has been. And all the European countries and other countries have this social democracy, which is, I've lived in a lot of those countries. I lived in Sweden, I lived in England, I lived in Ireland, and I've stayed in places like Norway and Germany and Spain and Italy and Greece, and so they have a far better, pretty much every industrial nation has a single payer health care, right? We don't. And boy, is it going to get messy. And not only that, we're gotten rid of all the public health entities that we had. And, we put that chucklehead in front of our health department. And so it's going to be fun. We've had something like, I don't know how many, 800, 1,000, between 2000 and 2021, the United States had 3 people get the measles. Now that, Chuckles is telling people not to get vaccinated, we have 1,000 or so in not even a year. So it's going to be interesting. And you thought the pandemic was like scary and weird? But all of this shit has to happen. If you go watch Cliff Hyde, he really gets into the math of what's going on via his algorithms and his, remote viewing. And he's not doing the remote viewing. He's set up the algorithms that they take the data they get from the remote viewers and put it in there. So the data is even more interesting. So anyway, that's it. Let's see. So no one's really saying much. There's one person, AI, hey, you puppy dog. So come on, AI, help me out with that, all my bureaucrat crap. Like, I mean, it's okay. I got 98% of it kind of smoothed out, but, and it's okay. Whatever, the other 2% I'm, going to take care of, but it's more just the annoyance. And I guess God has put that in my way. It's like a teaching tool. And I was like a little annoyed with it the last few days because I've really tried. And once I found that all of this bureaucracy is being run, everything is being pushed into AI. And our policing is going to be AI. Our courts are, they already are. Healthcare, AI, everything, you name it. So, what can I say? I need to have you guys, start, having some kind of conversation with me so we can make heads or tail of all of this. Come on. Let's see.
If your hands and feet burn, tingle, and hurt, your body is starving for this mineral. Did you?
Like falling down the stairs, Netanyahu's post-war losses were not limited to property. After the destruction of buildings and other vital infrastructure, news of the regime's further deterioration due to the damage to the Haifa oil refinery surfaced. The losses reached billions of dollars, triggering price increases and an energy crisis. What does this mean for Israel? How is this situation reshaping the Middle East's energy landscape? Read more in the following review. The crippled oil refinery caused $3 billion in losses.
The biggest fighter in America just keeps picking fights with newborns and keeps losing. But all jokes aside, I've honestly lost count of how many times that Trump said he's going to ban birthright citizenship and how many times the court has blocked him. Just recently, a federal judge issued yet another nationwide block against his order. But does that actually stop him? I mean, let's take a step back. The problem Trump keeps pushing is that people are abusing the system, showing up as tourists, having a baby, grabbing a passport, and then leaving the country. And sure, on the surface, that sounds like something worth dealing with, but is it really happening often enough to justify getting the 14th Amendment? Or maybe that's not even the real reason Trump wants it so badly. Let's figure it all out today, and here's the plan. I'm going to ask AI about the real reasons behind Trump's obsession with ending birthright citizenship, whether he'll ever succeed, and what ChatGPT predicts will happen next. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button if you're enjoying the video, and if you want to support the channel directly, hit that little join button and become a member. It seriously helps the channel grow. Thanks in advance, and now let's get to the video. All right, here we go. Now I needed to gather everything that's going on with this topic, and after that, I'll ask the first question. So now it's ready, and I want it to be clear, straightforward, unbiased, call a spade, no sugarcoating, no fluff, none of that. First, why does Trump want to end birthright citizenship so badly? Does ChatGPT actually think it's a real problem? And what's the whole point of the fight? And here's the answer. Trump wants to end birthright citizenship because he sees it as a loophole that rewards people who, in his view, come to the U.S. illegally and still get all the benefits of being American through their kids. His argument is simple. If someone enters the country without permission, their child shouldn't automatically get citizenship just because they were born here. He calls this a magnet for illegal immigration. That's been one of his biggest talking points for years. Tighten the border, crack down on undocumented immigration, and stop what he calls anchor babies, meaning kids born in the U.S. to non-citizen parents, which he believes can then be used to eventually legalize the entire family.
And basically, that's true. But if you look at the dynamics, how much money these people pay in taxes, what really services they get for it, and then what their kids do. Like the guy, one of the creators of Google, he was that, he was a illegal alien, pretty much all of Silicon Valley aren't white people. Jobs wasn't, Wozniak wasn't, Anyway, so, and one of the best things of America is the diversity of the immigrants, right? We're an immigrant country. And the rest of the world isn't that. And the rest of the world, especially the EU, is not very good at amalgamating these folks into their culture. Now, people, I know a lot, like I said, I lived in Sweden, so I know a lot of Swedish folk who, their parents came there from the Mideast. They came there from places like Albania and, Yugoslavia and all that kind of stuff when those wars were going on. And now they are been there for 20 years, have kids, and are citizens of Sweden, and they, have jobs and pay taxes, and or learn the language, and basically are really, and the Swedish people understand that. But other countries in Eastern Europe, they get a little, they're very xenophobic, pretty much. I mean, Sweden is a xenophobic country, but they realize the value. They don't want to just be white bread folk. They realize if these folks come, it's actually going to be good for their country. So that is the interesting motif of all of this, right? And that the general public, we really have to just embrace, the teachings of Jesus, who is Buddha, who is, every religion is the same religion. There's only one God, right? We're all humans. We're not black humans, red humans, yellow humans, Asian humans, Caribbean. No, we're all humans. And New York City was a great city in that it wasn't a melting pot. It was a salad bowl. So there were all these different cultures on top of each other. And they would be in their own little enclaves, but they'd be right on top of each other. It wasn't like they were separate. It's just, they were, but they weren't. They're right next to each other. They're right on top of each other. And then after, a generation or so, all those groups started, the Irish started marrying the Italians, and, the Lithuanians were, marrying the Egyptians, and they came out with great kids, So anyway, that's where we're at. But you have to realize that all of these politicians, all these people doing this ridiculous, stupid shit, having wars and stealing resources and all of that, they're doing it not because that's what, that one of the things is that's what we do. But the other thing, it is, they're doing it in such a way that they're breaking all. I mean, we've been doing that for at least, it's a Roman thing, so we've been doing it for 2,500 years. But we had all these interesting little guide rails to make it so everyone could kind of go along with it, right? The Romans called it bread and circus. And we have fast food and, flat screen TVs. So, and now all those TVs, your refrigerator, your washing machine is all listening to you and watching you. It's like, that's why I live where I do. These things don't work out here. I have to drive a few miles to my neighbor to jump on his Wi-Fi, right? But I have none of it, right? And I'm down in a holler, so all the waves kind of go over me. They don't really. So anyway, I'm in a unknown location, really right in front of you. So what do you want? And that's really what you're gonna. I want you to do some homework and figure out what you really want, and then look at your community. And find folk that they may not be the people you would normally hang out with, but go talk to them and start making community, because that's the only way this is going to get fixed. It's the only way it has been fixed in the past, and that's our biggest opportunity right now into the future, right? So that's the story. Let's see. What else is here? Let's put this up here. Okay, I think that works. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me now? What else is on the tube?
Until now, game changer. They have a wire trimming head that's universal. It's going to fit any weed eater.
Republicans in both the Senate and the House love to prove to us that they're just the worst people in the world at their jobs. And they've done it this week with the one big beautiful bill that, of course, was passed last week, signed into law by Donald Trump last Friday on the 4th of July. And then immediately the public backlash started. And Republicans thought, okay, well, we can weather the backlash. We know this is a hugely unpopular bill. It's underwater, according to a Newsweek poll that came out this week, by double digits still. Everybody hates it, but we can weather it. But then one group of people emerged, pissed to hell and back about this bill. And suddenly the Republicans on Capitol Hill are crapping their collective pants because they didn't want to piss this group off. And it's a weird group to think has this much power to make Republicans panic, but they clearly do. And it's gamblers. Yeah, a little weird, right? But gamblers are pissed off at the one big beautiful bill because it reduces the amount of losses that gamblers are allowed to write off on their taxes. It used to be, under current laws, not the one signed last week, a gambler had to report all their winnings, but they were also allowed to deduct all of their losses. So if you won $100,000, but you also lost $100,000.
So this guy, he's, again, the loyal opposition. He goes after the Republicans and goes on and on and on about this stuff, right? But does he put up any positive alternative to it? No. And that's what the loyal opposition does. A bunch of thugs are running our cabinet. Let's see what this one.
It's a kind of quid pro quo. Benjamin Netanyahu, currently at the White House, is nominating Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. In return, Trump is backing the Netanyahu plan to remove Palestinians from Gaza by persuading other Arab countries to offer them a better life. The two men have been discussing a 60-day ceasefire under which Hamas would release the last living hostages in exchange for Israeli troops withdrawing to a buffer zone. Netanyahu is also planning a massive security camp for 600,000 displaced Palestinians who'd be screened and then not allowed to leave until his giant immigration plan gets going. A humanitarian vision or a crime? Let's talk now to Ehud Olmert, former Israeli Prime Minister. Mr. Olmert, thank you very much for talking to us tonight. This discussion in the White House, however surreal, suggests that your vision and other people's vision for a two-state solution and a Palestinian state is, as far as Mr. Netanyahu is concerned, absolutely dead.
And again, that right there, two-state solution, it's another one of those loyal opposition. What really needs Palestine, the Jews and the Palestinians are the same people. They need one country where everyone is equal and has rights and freedoms under the law. And that's not what, the Zionist and quote unquote hidden hand wants. Because it's been a mess, since, 1893, and it just gets worse and worse and worse with each and really it's been this worse since 67. 67 war basically gave Israel the ability to take Palestine, to take the West Bank, to take parts of Syria, take Lebanon, right? And hold on to it for a number of years, right? Enough to discombobulate it so they know that, and they got the long-term thing, right? And again, it's not the Jewish people doing this. It's not the Hebrew tribes. And Zionism isn't what people think it is, because people who call them, the good majority of the Jews in Israel are not Middle Eastern. They're European, right? And they basically are there because they were offered a better gig, a nice piece of property or this, all your bills paid for, right? And you get educated, healthcare, a job, and you support this. Well, at the height of Israel's population, maybe 4 or 5 million people in a place the size of New Jersey. And now it's down to about 3 million. And they want to have a war with a country called Iran that's 90 times, Iran is the size of California and Texas put together. All mountains. Like, it's hard to fight a war, all in mountains. Go ask the people for the last 20 years who had fought in Afghanistan, right? Whereas, Iraq is like flat. So we could, drive our tanks and things all over the place, and still we couldn't win, right? So we settled for just taking control of Iran's oil. Anyway, all of this stuff is right in front of your face. You can see it all. There's guys like Cliff Hyde and Chris Hedges and whatchamacallit, dark journalist and Scott Ritter and Colonel what's his name, Doug, and a whole bunch of others. I mean, ton of people, right? And that my friend who's the scholastic goes on it. It's all because the Palestinians don't know how to play the game. Duh. Especially when Israel owns, Hamas. They invented it, gave them all the weapons, gave them $1 million every friggin' month for the last, 20 years. It's again, loyal opposition. So it's a very, if you watch this stuff, you have to, for me, it's this tool to develop my sight. So I've been trained and practiced observer for, 30, 40 years. But this is a different thing. It's more the spiritual. And I've been trained in I went to be a Catholic priest, a Buddhist monk, and a Jewish rabbi. I was trained to, over a 30-year period. I, tried out those robes. And I kind of didn't throw them away. I just kind of added it on to me. So it's called empathy. And that's what's missing. It's what's missing in America is empathy. Everyone has sympathy. It's like, oh, that's too big. Get out of the way. I'm in a rush. That's sympathy. So we've been doing this now an hour and 28 minutes. And, no one's there. So I think this is the end of the show. There's enough there for you to chew on. Folks, go and watch this thing and watch it a few times and, give some thumbs up and, subscribe and get some other people to watch it. And let's build the cadre so we can have a really good conversation. That's what I want, right? So, okay, I'm going to leave.